Let's get started and talking about decentralized AI training. So I know we have talked about agent, we have talked about data, and then so like now it's like jump right into training part, and probably like we can give like a short introduction on how's everyone's like dating experience so far in this arranged marriage, because like crypto and AI seems like arranged marriage, right? So it's like it is like not like an organic like love like relationship, like more like crypto native stuff like DeFi or like prediction market. And so like how's everyone dating so far, and do you see embarrassing or what?
I think if you look at the horoscope, they match, you know, like our star signs should match. I think in practice though it's a little bit more tense. A lot of, as everyone knows here, people from the real machine learning world despise crypto. They think it's, you know, monkey pictures and Lamborghinis and SPF. But from a technological perspective, it's completely obvious.
Yeah.
They say opposites attract, and I think that's what's going on here. I think you know, you brought up a good point, Harry, that like a lot of people in the ML world look down on crypto. But what I think is really interesting is all these AI agent meme coins were not crypto people. In fact, I mean, they're not docs, but they were all SF AI people, right? And I think that like more and more, both funds and users are realizing that like AI is great, but so long as it's in the hands of a few companies, you really block off capital formation and you really block off like the end user participation. And I also disagree with you, Dovey. I do actually think it's not arranged because with Ritual, I mean, we'll go into what we're building, but one of the biggest segments of applications that come to build on us are Web 2 AI businesses that have hit sort of a glass ceiling on how much they can innovate. There's only so much you can go as a chatbot platform charging revenue to users, and now shifting and protocolizing certain parts of their stack while keeping AI. They've managed to, one, with like privy a bunch of user abstractions, take out maybe for like the average user, like the actual end crypto experience and really abstract that with like points and like embedded wallets, while still delivering what in any other world would be like a normal gamified Web 2 product, right? Only with a lot more bells and whistles that are better for users. So I actually think that maybe this arranged marriage are actually starting to fall in love, so.
And then also just as so statistically speaking, like arranged marriage and people have like better like satisfaction rate somehow. Like optionality is the bitch. Okay.
Don't tell that to my mom.
Okay, so Alex?
Yeah, I mean, so my background is all AI, so I feel like I kind of walked this path and now I have to go back and bring my colleagues along as well, right? I'm like, look, it's okay, it's fine, it actually makes sense. And I think we're just going to see more and more of that. As people realize this actually makes sense, crypto is needed here, these are smart people, they can think it through, they can see.
Yeah, I basically second all those points, honestly. I feel like it is inevitable to some extent because like the value props of crypto are going to be so strong. Like obviously the capital element for open source AI is like really important, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to do some hand holding as well too, right? You kind of got to lead them to, you got to show them, you know, through points or something like that, or through a platform. So yeah.
I think I would just say that one thing for me is when you can convince the AI people like there's a really interesting technical problems here and there's like foundational papers to be written, that's what actually brings the people to this kind of area.
Yeah, so I think like one operational question I have probably for Harry and for like Alex, and you both like work a lot more with like AI native people. Is it like very like costly to just like hire them and like pitch them?
Typically for machine learning researchers, who are typically the hardest to hire, if you go earlier career, we actually find that the differential between the most gilded engineers and or researchers rather, and the earlier stage ones actually isn't as high as the price would indicate. So there's like an asymmetry there. I think the second point is there is an emerging cohort of people in the kind of machine learning research community who are very attracted to open source, and they view the crypto angle. They look one way and they see the open AIs, they see the Anthropics, and they don't like it, and they look the other way, and the only thing there is like Hugging Face in crypto. And that's attractive for them. And then I think the third and final piece is with the increasingly favorable macro environment, crypto becomes a slightly more attractive proposition. It's not a bear market anymore.
Cool. So what about Alex?
Yeah, I think Harry's right. You got to go after people that are early career because very senior researchers, it's just so hard, right? That is very, very difficult. I just echo what I said before, right? While money is an important thing, these people are very, I don't want to say status driven, but like citations are very important to them. Good papers are very important to them. And so at least for me, most of my conversations are just like, look, guys, there's like foundational papers up for grabs in a field that's going to be very, very large and very significant. like there's a very rare opportunity. You got to be quick. That's sort of how you do it, I think.
Debbie, can I chime in?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think we like talk about this a lot. We will be a lot more. Obviously, I think a lot of people know Ritual from the people who are in crypto. I'd say about 30% of our team are actually pure AI people. So we've like poached principal researchers from like Microsoft, from like OpenAI, blah, 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 right? They are expensive, but the second point you made about foundational papers, there's a swath of research problems that like traditional AI is aware of, but there's no incentives in place to go make those happen.
Yeah, and
right?
also like no like priority as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Hugging Face should be the platform that does the most amount of research and pours the most amount of funding on how do you like watermark open source models so you can monetize them while divulging weights, but they don't, right? And there is a swath of AI researchers who are very keenly working on interest in that in the same way that crypto drove funding to cryptography to make it production grade in a way never seen before. No one, Chiesa was working on Starks, and so were the rest of them for years before they got funding. I think that's happening right now. The paper we just put out was on verifiable fine-tuning, which to my knowledge is like the first verifiable fine-tuning protocol ever, along with watermarking. And that was done purely by like principal researchers that have worked at AI labs. And that was something they probably would have never been able to do if they stayed at Microsoft or wherever they were.
Cool. So talking about like paper and like research, and so I remember my professor back at Stanford, he has a quote that why academic fought so bitterly because the state is so low, right? And like people are fighting for like co-authorship, like the ranking of the author, like each index, and like each index is such an interesting metric and becoming kind of like circle jerking, I think, like when it comes to like academic paper. And like outside of like paper, right? And like anything that you guys have seen that like crypto can bring on like an actual value prop when it comes to building products or like just like making like the tech like more accessible, things like that. Especially when it comes to training or like we can talk about like full stack, yeah. So like not just training because like ChatGPT is not accessible in Dubai, right? So it's not accessible in Dubai, in China, in Hong Kong. So I've been thinking, okay, can we have like local inferences and so like billions of people can have access to the LLM, yeah.
So I think this is very interesting because what Ritual's building is an AI L1 that enshrines the ability to do certain AI operations natively from inference to fine-tuning. Right now, those are the ones that we're working on. And I think the real inspiration for that is that crypto was the fastest growing technology before AI. And I think the pure reason for that is Ethereum came along and took the computer and made it a public good and anyone could access it if they had an internet connection, right? And a lot of what we want to do, and I think a lot of what needs to be done across many protocols, including many of the people up here, across the stack, compute, training, data, whatever, is that we need to have that sort of Ethereum moment for the entire stack, right? And I think you nailed one of them, which is that there is a geographical arb. I think, if I'm being like very facetious and being very raw, I think that all of crypto is either regulatory capture or regulatory arbitrage. In AI, it's very clear which one. And in crypto, it's very clear which one. When you break down arbitrary rules set by governments due to geopolitics, you attract a lot more talent. Does it lead to bad stuff? Yes, we have Lazarus Group in traditional crypto. Does it lead to, more net good? I think, yes, right? I think you lower the barriers for everyone. So beyond that, I also do think that there is a lot of underdeveloped spaces around like, one interesting thing we've been exploring is like AI as a mode for cultural exploration. So there's a lot of like AI applications that are tailored for specific regions. Yep. You wouldn't really discover
model
that.
as well, right?
Yeah,
so because
models.
like language model has to be culturally specific.
Exactly, which is why there's so much funding going into like Sakana Labs and all these like localized AI startups, right? And even at the application layer, right? You want a way for people to discover that really easily globally in the same way that crypto has. You want people to be able to pay for that seamlessly anywhere in the world, right? And I think largely we can sit here and talk about decentralization and all its benefits and all that good stuff, but tactically, like what's actually important is that when you knock down barriers, you almost always exponentially increase, like superly increase the number of developer activity and experimentation. And that's actually way more important than I think any of the ideology could get you.
Yep. And so what about Harry? Because you guys are asynthesis like portfolio, right? And so Mark is pretty well known for like American exceptionism. Like, do you see there's like an arm race between the East and West, like when it comes to like decentralized AI or just like LLM in general? And then so how you guys position there? And like, do you have like geo-specific focus? And yeah.
So we, as a protocol, take the cypherpunk kind of anarchist view that it should be completely open. I don't care if it's in America or if it's somewhere else. I think America's founding principles are far, far closer to mine than like North Korea or something. But the kind of fundamental is the internet should be open, it should be public, the government should stay out of it. I agree strongly with the regulatory arbitrage point. I definitely think that basically it's a leveling technology, both in terms of leveling intelligence, but also as a commodity. It kind of allows you to arbitrage electricity prices around the world, for example, in the same way that Bitcoin did. I think the American dynamism thesis from Andreessen was great, and it kind of touches on this live wire of basically just unfettered capitalism, which is also good in my opinion. But in terms of how the internet should be, I definitely disagree with the idea of like the internet being geographically kind of vulcanized into different things. Although I think increasingly that's happening, and you kind of have like a Chinese internet and a European internet and an American internet, and it probably will go that way. But we need to build freedom technology that allows you to basically, circumvent all of that.
Yeah, so like you said, one very interesting experience is because I scroll like Japanese crypto Twitter, Chinese crypto Twitter, and English crypto Twitter, and what I realized is that Twitter actually censor like the English language the most, but like not the other languages, right? And then like Entrepreneur has been like the bank has been the platform, and like with their like whatever like the most like mother tongue is, and then so like that's definitely something that the deep version can probably solve that. And then so let's talk about training, because currently, like if we think about previously, like the VC money all goes to Facebook and like Google, right? So for all the consumer application, and now all the VC money in AI like goes to NVIDIA, right? So like as an investor, I should just buy NVIDIA call option. So is there anything that like decentralized training can probably change that?
Absolutely. Basically, there's more flops outside data centers and inside data centers. And if you can access that and you can saturate every device with, verifiably proven machine learning operations, you can do two things. One, you can sort of loosen the stranglehold that NVIDIA have on the market. And two, you can kind of pay homage to the neural scaling laws and just build bigger and better models and have more emergent intelligence. So I think it's crucial that you kind of go beyond the data centers and hardware. I do think, though, just to your point, NVIDIA is definitely the #1 centralization risk in the whole space. Beyond government, in my opinion. They just have such strong, sticky effects from a hardware perspective. They're more dangerous than government.
Yeah, that's actually a good point too, on to your first point of like, it's hard to get 10,000 GPUs in one data center, but it's much easier to maybe get like 1,000 GPUs in 10 data centers. And so if you can solve the problem of actually being able to to train large scale models across those data centers, then obviously like the utility of the compute becomes like, it increases, right? Because you can actually use it to do large scale like training, and you don't actually need to spend like a bunch of money on like a single data center, like 10,000 GPUs in a single data center.
And so do you guys have any like benchmarks so far? Like let's say if I remember you guys just launched like a distributed version training. So do you guys have done like benchmark when it comes to performance, and then like how we can solve like all these IO bottleneck and like things like that, like without co-location?
Yeah, so what we did recently, what you're referring to is we released Intellect 1, which is basically the largest scale decentralized training run that's been done so far. It was 10 billion parameters, and we're training it across the world. So we have like data centers in the US, EU, India, as well as Singapore, and it's all like collectively training a 10 billion parameter model. And basically what we're trying to show here is that you actually can do large scale distributed training with like very little compute overhead. So for example, the way that our training framework works is that rather than syncing at every step, you sync every 100 or so steps. So like in reality, if you train for like 1 hour, there's literally just like a 2 to 5 minute overhead of training, and we think we can reduce that. We're literally like rewriting our communications library to reduce that, so we think we can actually get it pretty low and fairly competitive with centralized training.
Yeah, and then so like Alex, like you were working on AWS before. And then so like that's like a completely paradigm when it comes to like their like distributed system design versus like your like current design. Can you share like any learning? Just like what have you learned from like the previous like cloud experience, and then like now working on your own product?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can talk quickly about how we view it at Pluralis, right? So
yeah.
Our view for the large model training is you have to get model parallel to work. So model parallel is like the model itself is sharded across nodes. Rather than having model replicas that you're sort of doing infrequent syncs with, if you want to scale to like trillion parameter models, you got to split it over devices. And like the sort of easiest first type of model parallelism is pipeline. That's what we're focusing on. You have this core problem in pipeline parallel if you're training over the internet, where you have like this one-to-one communication that is 100 megabit a second rather than 500 gig InfiniBand, right? And this is typically the thing why people say this whole approach is infeasible. I just would make the point that like every area in deep learning right now is blue sky research. We're not in this field where it's like a stable, consolidated, area like physics where, advances will require genuine breakthroughs. It's more that there's like more research surface area than there are researchers. And it's even what I'm seeing internally with some of our work is like sustained pressure to these problems is like yielding very quick, immediate results. And I expect this is going to be solved like much, much quicker than maybe the sort of is consensus view.
Yeah, so like just one analogy I've been making to my AI or just like native AI or like crypto AI port courses, when we try to invent the plane, right? And so like there's a lot of like mimic on like how like birds fly and then like birds anatomy, but it's actually the aerodynamics that makes us to make like a better plane and then so make us to be able to fly. And do you guys see when it comes to like the frontier research domain, is there this level of like first principle level breakthrough that how we can decipher like neural net and then so at this aerodynamic level? Because like the reason why I think like back in the day, how OpenAI like trained their model was not being a lot of attention in like the native academics, like the academic considered that as not so simple and beautiful, right? So it's like kind of like brute force. So like everyone is trying to find that like beautiful formula as like aerodynamics can totally solve this like LLM or just like deep learning problem. Yeah, so like any like research there.
Yeah, I think there's one actually on the data side. So there's this issue of, we're training on the whole of the internet. There's a lot of the internet's becoming generative. There's going to be a mode collapse in terms of the models trained on the internet in the future. We can either make the data more synthetic. That probably won't be useful in my opinion. Secondly, we can fold in more data that already exists into the training runs. So proprietary data that will probably add some fuel to the fire, but not enough. There's a genre of data which is basically biological data that we haven't tapped into yet. And in the next kind of 2 to 5 years, when brain-machine interfaces are much more ubiquitous, the sensor data, which will be interesting, will be the kind of human sensor data. So if you can model brain waves and you can use them to fuel models, a lot of the kind of symbolic kind of representations of things in the human brain can actually be used to bootstrap, in my opinion, bootstrap models. So there's a new kind of like frontier of data, which is basically just human brainwave data that I think will be like one of the next huge unlocks for reasoning in models, and also will help them approximate kind of human intelligence better as well.
And also like AI, the agent gonna generate each agent will probably have their own like data set and like model as well, right? So they're also generative. Yeah, and so like training wise, and have you guys seen like from your like client side, right? So like what are they looking for when it comes to like decentralized training, or like any of this like surface areas that can have like a strong value prop, like just to convince them that you should probably run your own cluster, or like you should probably like do like decentralized AI training instead of like just like have like on the cloud.
Yeah, so like one compelling pitch that we found was if you look at a lot of compute marketplaces like Akash, RunPod, Lambda Labs and whatnot, there's basically like 20 to 30% idle compute just like sitting around. And so what we're basically doing is we obviously aggregate a lot of compute onto our platform. So we aggregate compute across all these different providers. And basically what we're enabling is you to leverage that idle compute to actually contribute to these training runs. So like rather than like having the compute sitting idle around, and also the compute providers like not getting full utilization and hence full revenue of their compute, we can allocate that towards decentralized training. And it's obviously like cheaper for the model trainer as well too. And the compute providers are happy because they earn more.
So like any other like supplements on like this topic?
Yeah, I think like the big problem today, right, is if you want to do a big foundation model run, you need to be rich, right? And the whole point of Pluralis, what I'm trying to do with decentralized training, is if you can do collaborative runs and you can allocate with actual fractional model ownership rather than someone just paying for the model, you actually allow innovation at that layer, which as of today is not possible. So for me, it's much less about, okay, there's certain use cases that wouldn't be served by a centralized model run, and more about there are model designers that are completely locked out from this layer today. And that's actually sort of the problem you're solving for there.
I'll move a little bit away from foundational model training because I think these guys are much better equipped to talk about it than I am. And I'll talk about fine-tuning, which I consider maybe a subset of that. And the biggest thing that we get from a lot of clients, and part of the reason we did VTune, was using fine-tuning, using watermarking schemes, and creating something that's robust that they can go and imprint their models, right? Because there is a subsector, there's a class of sort of people who take base models and to tune it for a certain application. They want to make that accessible. They want to keep with the open source ethos and enable open innovation, but they also don't want to give it up for free. And that's sort of like the status quo right now. So finding ways in fine-tuning processes to inject schemas that are really hard to fool, and also doing that in a verifiable way so they don't have to do it like locally, that's been a really big thing, and that's why we're working a lot of that research.
Cool. Harry, like, if you have anything to say about this?
I'd say one of the issues is when you do like fine-tuning and stuff, like the way that you treat the adapter heads in decentralized environments is difficult. It's something that we've come up against for training, where one additional layer into a training process, and they have to get another kind of machine in a pipeline parallel setting. Is something we think about a lot. There's like a consistency point, just to be succinct about it.
Cool. I think we're pretty much done here. But like one last thing, and then so can anyone just name your favorite like AI agent or AI meme coin? Like it can be or and. Manveer.
I guess Teehee from Noose is kind of cool.
Alex.
This is going to be bad, but I'm generally not paying attention to that. I'm sorry.
Like not even AI agent. Like
I just want to get large scale training to work. That's all I want to do.
Okay. Focus. Like founders mode. Saneel.
So, since Virtuals uses us.
Okay. That's like a client show. Harry?
Probably that.
Probably Cardano or something.
That's very contrarian. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you very much.